All right, thanks, Angela. Now to part two questions. The first question for the panel: has the NAIA considered how the change in rule for what counts as a season of competition impacts redshirt opportunities for athletes? And here's the scenario that's defined. For example, a baseball player who decides as a freshman to redshirt because he is behind several seniors, then cannot play baseball in the Walter Johnson Baseball League. It's a league here in Kansas. The following summer in Wichita, because it will cost him a season of competition. The ramifications for this are serious, and I think you talked about this, how the membership will be addressing this as a legislative amendment to continue the current practice. But could you just reiterate, Angela, 10-11 and moving forward, how that would impact, or is that a Marcus question?
Yeah, definitely. As Angela mentioned, the proposed legislation will be voted on in April, and if passed, if adopted, that situation that you just described, that student athlete, if he participates in the summer, and if it's considered countable, that will begin his 12-month period. Moving forward, going into 2011-12, that student will still be considered in his one season of competition. Okay, and so what that means is that the student will still have to meet the eligibility requirements, but not entering into his second season, still be considered his first season.
I just want to make sure I understand this as well. We have a redshirt baseball player from this semester who then plays Walter Johnson baseball this summer. Under the 10-11 guidelines, would not be charged an additional season of competition. However, if the amendment does not pass in the April convention, next year, if that our incoming freshman redshirted in next spring and then went to Walter Johnson that summer, they would be charged another season of competition, or am I misstating that?
I just want to make myself clear. If you have a student that participates in the summer, and that summer is considered countable, that begins that student's 12-month window. Moving forward, the student would not be charged an additional season of competition. Only one season of competition. So that's I just want to make myself clear on that point. Sure.
It's a little bit confusing because this unattached competition interpretation or legislation that's coming forward in April, it actually doesn't speak to this particular point. We're going to ask the National Eligibility Committee whether they believe it should in the future, that you might say because the students competing under the umbrella of the NAIA for the period of that year, perhaps that summer should continue to be considered unattached, but at this point it's not. But the 12-month window that Angela was talking about really does pick it up. So you start, it's that movable beginning of the 12-month window. So the period where you're not competing in the year doesn't trigger the start of the window. It's when the student starts playing in the Walter Johnson Baseball League. That starts the 12 months, and everything in that 12 months is just the first season of competition.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the comment, Marcus, and for the additional follow-up, John, as well. Our next question comes in from Union College, Kentucky. Stephen Laverso, I believe. His question is, when will you start to clear international athletes? There are several rumors about this, and just would like to get some clarification. So when will international student athletes be cleared by Eligibility Center?
We have already begun the process of doing research on international leagues to help with the competitive experience review for international students. The thing that you need to keep in mind with international students or students with a break or transfer students is that what they're doing right now, either academically or athletically, plays a part in their eligibility determination. And so a final determination is based on some of the information that we don't have yet from these students, because we can't project or predict what they will or won't do in the next couple of months. However, we will start making those determinations once we're able to kind of put a line down and say, at this point, we can say, all right, we know what they will or won't do, or how that will impact their determination going forward for the fall semester.
Now, what I've asked the staff to do, Scott, is concentrate first on the early decisions because we know those are in the pipeline now and they're ready to be made. And we've caught up. I think as of Friday, we'll be on a real-time basis so that we will have treated every early decision candidate that we've received to this point, and every day we get a new set, we'll treat those immediately. So we'll be handling those on a continuing basis. And at that point, as of this Friday, essentially, what I'm saying to the staff is start to now pay attention to international students because we know those are going to take extra time, and we want to do the research beginning right now to try to ferret out the issues related to international students. So the answer is essentially right now. We're beginning. We won't be able to conclude the process for the reasons that Angela stated because we need additional information down the line.
Very good. We're coming close to the end of our time for this part 2, but I do have one additional question. I don't have a name or institution on this one, but the question is, does each coach at an individual school have his or own short list, or is there just one short list, or the question says one big short list for all recruits at a given institution?
You should think of it as your own shortlist because you can filter your school shortlist by sport or by season. So all fall sports, all winter sports, all spring sports, and view just those students that you've added or that your coaches have added to the shortlist. But your school, as we see it, we see all of the students on a short list, so we can prioritize any student who's been flagged as being on a short list will go towards the top of our priority. But within Play NAIA Manager, you can filter the short list for your school by the sport, or you could look at all the students on your school short list. But again, that is exclusive to your school. No one outside of your school sees that except for those of us on staff in the Eligibility Center.
Thank you, Scott. I sure appreciate it. These are great questions. This is going very well, and I really appreciate everybody's thoughts, and both out in the digital audience and in the room here as well. So I really appreciate everybody's time. As I said earlier, we are picking up steam. We've got about 16,500 who started the process in some way, and about 7,300 who, as of March 1st, had paid and completed their registration. And I want to make one note, which I find encouraging, and that is that of those first 6,000, we survey the students each in groups of 2,000 after they've registered. And in the first 6,000 that we've surveyed, we continue to find that about 40% of those are students who say they learned about the NAIA in the last year or as a result of this process. And I think that's really encouraging. So one of our major goals, the NAIA's major goals in reaching out and creating awareness with a new audience is well underway at this point. If you look at the breakdown for the students that have registered to this point, you'll see the top 5 states. California is almost 900, Texas about 500, Kentucky 400, Missouri about 350, and Illinois about the same. So those are the top 5 states. If you look at the top 5 countries outside the United States, as we predicted, about 6% of the registrants to date are international students. We thought when we started, based on enrollment in previous years, that 6 to 7% of the students would be international students, so we're running on a par with that projection. And of those students who have registered to this point from other countries, there are 54 countries that are represented in all, with Canada leading the group with 108, and England in the 80s, and Australia and Brazil and Sweden sort of in the low 30s to high 20s. So that's the top 5 countries that are represented out of those 54. If you look at registrations by sport, there's not a lot that would surprise you. It's about what you would expect. It's the sports with the large rosters and the most popular sports in terms of sponsorship at the institutional level. So you have about 1,500 students registered in football, 1,000 in baseball, 900 in women's volleyball, men's soccer, women's soccer, softball are at the next level, followed by men's and women's basketball. So there's not anything that I think you'd say is very surprising in those statistics. Again, you can use Play NAIA Manager. Remember, that's your home base for everything that's Eligibility Center related on your campus. You can use Play NAIA Manager to check on the status of students on your short list. So let's take a look at the categories. If you go to Play NAIA Manager, let's look at some of the categories that can be used to show the status of a given student's file. First of all, obviously not completed. There's information that's missing for that student, and the student has been made aware of the information that's missing and that we're requesting before we can go forward. Secondly, there's a pending status, which I want to spend a little bit of time talking about, because the student remains in this category until all the information has been received and a manager begins reviewing that student's file. It doesn't indicate that there's a problem. It's just waiting for all the information, like a final transcript, to be provided so that we can begin to move forward. As I said before, we've made about 1,200 early decisions to date. And if we review a file and a student doesn't qualify for early decision, then we show that student as final transcript required. It's a communication, and we do communicate with the student to basically say, you haven't qualified under the early decision category, so we're going to need to have another transcript at the end of the year so that we can continue to process your file. I want to spend just a second talking about the timeline for determinations, because I think there's a little bit of confusion about this, and I wanted to clarify by basically saying that the timeline for the determinations really isn't much different from what you would find on your own campus. The SAT and the ACT scores are sent to us electronically, and remember that 9876 is the address that the student uses to bring that test score from the agency directly to us. The high schools send transcripts to us at the student's request at the 6th, 7th, or 8th semesters, depending on where the student believes he or she is in terms of the early decision process. But those are coming to us, and we digitize those right away and put them into the system. And then we can look at class rank and GPA from those transcripts as we receive them. So in my mind, at least, that's pretty similar to the way it would happen on a given campus, and in basically the same general time frame, because that information is coming to us at essentially the same time that it's coming to you. So we want to stress today that the timeline, in our view at least, hasn't really changed very much. We can't make a final determination until the student graduates. And again, that's really not different from the way it works on your campus right now. You can't make a final eligibility determination until you've got that information. But coaches and admissions officers can, and we hope that they will, make educated decisions about their recruiting and offers that are being made. We believe that's the way it worked on campus before. We believe that's the way it should continue to work. So there is information out there that can be obtained that would allow you as a coach to make an educated decision. That was available. It is available still. And one other thing I'd like to say is we're available to work with you. We know that we've got some information. Sometimes you may not have it quite yet. And if you have questions about competitive experience with a given student or the academic status of a given student, where we are in the process with a given student, call us. We are a personal service, so we want to talk to you as a human, and we want to get you into the system. And so give us a call, tell us who we're talking about, we'll look them up in the file, and we'll give you as much information as we have at that point. I do want to talk a little bit about staffing. I know that there's a concern out there that whether we are going to be able to handle the load as it increases over the course of time.